my lovely friends, it's Margaret, and it's time to talk about what I read in September. September was a little bit of a slower reading month for me this month. I didn't read a terrible lot of books. Part of that is because I've been listening to podcasts instead of audiobooks, which is how I get most of my reading done, if you've paid attention to past wrap-ups. But I just have been in a podcast mood. I found some that I'm like just going back in their backlog and listening to and learning things or getting angry. It just depends on which podcast I'm listening to. I don't have any real die-hard new favorites, although I did manage to find a 5-star read for this month. But like no books that I'm just like, I need to tell everyone about this book and make them all read it. There's a TV show that we could discuss that I watched in September, but like this isn't a TV show. I'm gonna make a video on it anyways, who are we kidding? But yeah, if you haven't watched Julie and the Phantoms yet, go watch it, because that is now a requirement for being friends with me. Back to my reading. It wasn't a disappointing reading month, but it wasn't like stellar. Does that make sense? I'm like happy with what I read, but I still feel a little bit like kind of meh about it, which is like, does that make sense? Like I'm like, could have been a better reading month, could have been a worse reading month. It's just like a 3-star reading month overall. As usual, we are going to start out with my reading stats. At some point, I will compile all of these, maybe at the end of the year, when it will give me less of a headache than it was giving me in the mid-year wrap-up. Yeah, keep track of what you're counting as what genre and stuff, so your math adds up. Also, heads up, I am trying something new with my synopsis thing, what I do with the synopsis. I didn't feel like what I was doing kind of got my personality across, except for, you know, the one innuendo that I made last month in one of them. But I just wanted to try something that gives you more of like a snapshot about what the book is about and kind of what drew me to the book, and less about what is actually happening in the plot, because I hate doing synopses where it's like, this is what happened. Like, I already have to do that for my own book. I don't want to do it for other books. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. Do you think it works? We can always go back to the old way and I'll just deal with the headache that it is, but I wanted to try something a little more fun, a little more, I don't know, we'll see. Because it's not going to work for every book, but it still is something that can be adjusted to work for other books that are, like, for example, nonfiction, or something that maybe should be taken a little more seriously. So, quick explainer here, because I forgot how to booktube, but you're going to see this book in my stats. It is not a book I read this month. It is the sequel to that book. However, I did most of the filming for this and then didn't do the stats video, but I had to return American Royals to the library. So just know that, like, this is a stand-in for American Royals when you are looking at my stats. That's just how it's going to work. I read 5 books in the month of September. That comes to 1,757 pages. The format breaks down to 3 audiobooks and 2 physical books. The age category breaks down to 1 adult book, 2 YA books, and 2 middle grade books. The genre breaks down to 3 fantasy, 1 romance, 1 historical fiction. My ratings break down to 1 5-star, 2 4 stars, and 2 3 stars. And then 4 of those books were books that I already owned, and 1 of them was a book that I borrowed from the library through Overdrive, saving myself $18.99. 4 of those books were in fact on my TBR, and 3 of them actually were part of Readathon. I read Dominicana by Angie Cruz and Saving Lucas Biggs by Marissa de los Santos and David Teague for the Latinx book Bingo. And then Saving Lucas Biggs was also the group book for Vaultathon. It met the prompts of a book under 300 pages, a book where a character travels to the past, and a book where the main character teams up with something. And then I read Winterwood by Shay Earnshaw to complete the final prompt for Vaultathon, which was to read a book about a special family. My favorite book for the month was The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan, and my least favorite book of the month was American Royals by Catherine McGee. Now that you know the basics of what went down in my reading month, let's get into the details about each book. The first book I finished in the month of September was American Royals by Catherine McGee. Look at that glare. American Royals is a YA romance, and it's an alternative history that is based on, like, if George Washington, instead of becoming the first president, had become a king. If you want a book about royalty, if you want a book about responsibility and duty and sacrifice, if you want a book with really weird, complex sibling dynamics, a book about family, this is going to be a great book for you. While I will say that this was my least favorite book of the month, it wasn't for lack of me enjoying the book. It was good entertainment. It was an interesting plot and, like, compelling. It was not my favorite. It took me longer to get into than every other book. I think part of that is just where I am personally, because we'll get into that in a minute. But like, I think part of that was where I was personally. I think part of that was possibly the book, but I definitely think I might reread it at some point. It depends on how the series go. Now, I will say I went into this thinking that it was a standalone and we were going to have the plot wrapped up within one book. I knew there was a sequel, but I thought the sequel had been done kind of after the fact, but turns out like it's a whole series that's going to be happening, and so you actually do want the second book on hand if you're going to read this. I really wasn't into this book until the romance started getting what's the word? It's not kinky. Whoever's sitting there about to say kinky, it's not kinky. The romance started to get complicated. Does that make sense? Like, the romance, or angsty, or fraught, or like, there were problems. Problems were happening with the romance. There was conflict with the romance. Like, you kind of could see what couples were being set up, but until that kind of conflict happened, and you started to see the main character, which is Beatrice, kind of getting, like, being put in a spot and having to confront, like, her own feelings, that was when I finally was like, okay, I guess I'm into this book. But, like, I was reading this book about very privileged, very rich people in this time where we are all just struggling, especially, like, if you are a millennial, struggling financially, and I was just like, I really, like, I understand your problems are problems, and I empathize with you, but at the same time, please gain some perspective. Like, I just wasn't in the mood to be reading about American royalty. I was just like, this was probably a mistake to pick up, but I'd gotten it from Overdrive. Their problems just seem so stupid and trivial compared to, like, Nina's problems. I was just like, and then it doesn't help that one of the characters I absolutely hated. You're supposed to hate them, but I just can choke. The character can choke. I hope they get run over by a car. I really enjoyed the family dynamics and the complicated stuff that it was going on, especially towards the end of the book where things are more out in the open and you start to kind of get the characters communicating more. There's a tension between Beatrice and it's Samantha? Yes, it is Samantha. When it's first person, I just don't do well with names. I'm sorry. Also, I don't do names anyways. Like, who am I kidding? I'm a booktuber. We never remember names. Once Beatrice and Samantha kind of started talking again, I was much more there. I really am excited to see where their relationship goes in the future, especially, like, considering kind of the way the romance could also cause some problems with the two of them. Again, I think it was a little bit slow at the beginning for my preference, my taste. I just didn't think that, I would have liked a little more action at the beginning. Something big happening that was not just people going to parties and feeling bad because their parents don't love them as much as the other sibling. And I'm just like, tough luck, kid. That happens to all of us. At least you have a gajillion fancy cars and some nice ball dresses, and you never have to worry about having a roof over your head. I am going to be continuing on with the series, obviously, because they really did get me towards the end. It ended, and I was like, what? It's mean. It wasn't nice. I didn't like it. Also, you not mean like you saw it coming, but at the same time, I was just like, I need, but what happens next? So it really got me towards the end once that pacing issue picked up, and I like the family dynamics. Like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing where we go with Samantha and Beatrice's relationship, with Jefferson, how he fits in there, with Nina, all of that. I'm interested in seeing what happens with these characters. I can forgive the plot for being a little bit slow since I'm invested now in the character. The next book we need to talk about is The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan. The Hidden Oracle is the first book in the Trials of Apollo series. This is a middle grade fantasy about Apollo. He has been cast down from the heavens by Zeus because Zeus is mad at him for causing what happened in the last Camp Half-Blood series, The Heroes of Olympus. This is great if you are a Percy Jackson fan. If you want to go back to Camp Half-Blood, we are back at Camp Half-Blood. This is great if you are trying, like, you like retellings of mythology. It's great if you like watching characters have to deal with consequences and come to personal reckoning. It also has LGBT rep in there because Apollo is bisexual, so if you're looking for any of those things, this would be a great book to pick up. A girl has finally started the Trials of Apollo series. I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm happy, though, that I started it because, A, Percy Jackson is in it. Like, listen, if you are hesitant about this book, if you're having a hard time getting through this book, just know the best Percy Jackson moment is at the end of the book. This series, at least at the beginning, I believe is happening concurrently with the Magnus Chase series, which I kind of like, honestly. I like the fact that there are multiple apocalypses. I don't know what the plural of that is, but I like that they're multiply happening at the same time. Like, it's just like the different, like, pantheons of deities are like, we're just gonna screw the world over like 5 different ways all at the same time. It's like they plan this stuff. They're like teachers at midterms. I would, in fact, die for Meg. However, Meg is not our point of view character. It is Apollo. I think that's an intentional thing that Rick is doing because Apollo is a 16-year-old boy. Rick is a man. He didn't necessarily want to be writing from the perspective of a 12-year-old girl. I would have forgiven him because he's Rick Riordan, and I know that he does his research. He is trying his best. So I would have actually preferred seeing this through Meg's eyes. I'm gonna be on it. However, I understand why he didn't do things that way. However, Apollo is insufferable. I'm not kidding. I was rooting against him at the beginning of the book because I was just like, yeah, you are a child experiencing a consequence for the first time in your life, even though it's not the first time in your life. Thankfully, there's a thing called character growth. So, you know, there's hope for this character throughout the book and the series. But I was like, Percy, please just choke him. Just throw him out of the apartment. Like, if Percy had punched him, I would have been like, yes, please, that's exactly what he deserves at this point in the book, because he deserved a swift kick in the pants for being Apollo. I feel like this is probably closer in narration style to the Percy Jackson series than obviously the Heroes of Olympus was, but at the same time, it's still tailored to Apollo. I love how Rick does that. Again, it made me annoyed because Apollo, but at the same time, I was able to really appreciate the craft of what Rick was doing and the fact that he's really good with character voices, especially in first person. I also have gotten past the point where I'm like, I need the next book like I need to breathe, because I had to wait for the next book. But just know when you finish it, you're going to want the next book. It is going to feel like your life depends on it, sort of. I mean, it's not like a high stakes, like, it's a Percy Jackson ending. Like, this is very, very much like The Lightning Thief, if that makes sense. So, like, it's not the Mark of Athena in regards to how dangerous or nerve-wracking the ending was, but there were unanswered questions at the end of this book, and I wanted to know the answers, but the answers are in the next books. And so that made me mad. The next book we need to talk about is Dominicana by Angie Cruz. Dominicana is adult historical fiction. It's a story that follows Anna. It's very coming of age. She ends up marrying a much older man who is already kind of living and established in the United States. She marries him so that she can go back with him to the United States. This is a book that is about the complexities of immigration. It is a book about family and what you will do for family. And it is also a coming of age book about the American dream. If those things sound interesting to you, I would definitely pick it up. So this is a book that is hard for me to talk about because it is a very, very good book, but it also is very much a book not for me, if that makes sense, on multiple levels. Not just the fact that it is a book written about a Dominican woman or girl having to live the immigrant lifestyle. It's also a book that really doesn't have a romance, but this is also one that I was able to look past that kind of lack of the one thing that I'm most invested in books because it was so well written. Like, I was actually, for once, happy there was no real, I mean, I guess there kind of was. It's complicated when it comes to the romance, but like, I was just happy that it wasn't one where the things that I usually want to see and have happen in a book happen. I think if I had read this like in my early 20s or even in my teens, I would have had a huge issue with that fact, but as an adult woman now in my 30s, I'm like, no, this is exactly how it should have ended. It just has this fantastic voicey writing style. You are following Anna and you really get an idea of Anna's thought process, her frame of mind. You're really drawn in and connected to this character, which is great because she was the only character that I liked. It was a really interesting like stream of conscious kind of, this is where this situation started. Like, she doesn't just start with where you would normally start with a book. Like, a lot of people could have gone and just started with Anna marrying Juan. Yes, that's his name. With Anna marrying Juan. And this doesn't. It goes back and it says, this is where this started. You see how we got to that point of this very, very unequal and difficult marriage that Anna has been put in, with all of this pressure that has been put on her. You really feel for Anna. You really want someone to come in and not necessarily rescue her, but like, she's 15. You really want someone to come in and protect her from the things that she's having to deal with everything that's happened, with being married to an older man, with being transplanted to a completely new country with no understanding of the language. It is a very hard book. I will have trigger warnings in the description box for this one, because this is one that it's got some experiences that a lot of people have been through. So I also really appreciated the fact that despite me disliking, like, literally, or thinking that literally every character in this book had failed the main character in some way or another, I like the fact that despite that, you still had sympathy for them at points. You still, even though you completely disagreed and you're like, you're wrong for this, you can still see why they made the choices they made, how those choices got them where they were, and how hard they're just trying to survive in this book. I also felt that it was really well paced to be a book, at least for me, to be one that it was easy to keep reading. Like, it wasn't one that I'm sitting there going, oh my god, what's going on? Like, can the story start? The story started, but it was also, it's one of those books, like, if you're looking for something that is not going to consume you and make you have to, like, you have to sit down in one afternoon and finish the whole thing, this is a really good book, because it's very engaging, but it's also easy to put down, if that makes sense. Honestly, for me, there were places I was just like, I just need to put this down for now and no longer, like, spend some time where I'm not angry, because I spent a lot of this book just being angry at what Anna was going through. I just think it's a very good book for something that's going to keep you engaged, but also allow you to have self-control in reading it. If you can hear people running, it's the children from down the road. They're just running back and forth, up and down, and you know what? I'm gonna let them do it. I'm not gonna be that old lady that's like, get out of my lawn, because they're technically not in my lawn, but, you know, like, just deal with it. You might hear some children running. Let them be children. So the next book we need to talk about is Saving Lucas Biggs by Marissa de los Santos and David T. Saving Lucas Biggs is a middle grade fantasy about Margaret. Still weird for me to say, we're gonna acknowledge that her father ends up being sentenced to death for something that she knows he did not do. Since her family can time travel, her solution to that is to decide she's going to go back in time to change the life of the judge who sentenced her father. This is a really fun book if you're looking for time travel adventures, if you're looking for books about family, if you're looking for books that are going to talk about questioning the historical narrative, and if you want to watch children do incredibly dangerous things that they should not be doing. Definitely pick this book up. So if you were looking for a middle grade that adults can enjoy as well as children, like, is equally good for adults and children, this is not it. I even think, like, oh my goodness. So I have mixed feelings about this book. I like what they were trying to do with this book. I like the fact that they are introducing the idea of whitewashing history to a younger audience, because it quite often happens, especially in cases like these where you're working with a powerful entity versus just normal everyday people, which is what happens. This is very, very realistic to what I know about a lot of labor strikes that happened around this time. However, I don't think they really did the best job of it. I think there were places where they could have explained things better. I think there was a lot that happened together. Now, there is one part that, I don't want to spoil the book, there's one part that is very, very fast-paced and a lot of stuff happens, and that part was realistic, but then it was like all of this other stuff kind of happening on top of each other later on in the book it was also fast-paced, but it wasn't real, like, it didn't feel realistic. It was a very odd kind of comparison between having this one scene or a couple of, like, this one chapter where it's like, yeah, this fast-paced thing with all of this stuff happening makes sense, but then these several chapters that are detailing all of this fast-paced stuff that's happening doesn't make sense. Part of that was because I just, like, they didn't really set up why the kids were the ones tackling the thing they were tackling, if that makes sense. It was like, why are we letting the children do this? Why are the adults not being involved? Why are the adults not taking charge? I don't think they particularly succeeded. I do think some of the stuff that one of the characters does, I was like, I have cousins that would do that. So, makes sense. I think this is a good starting point if you are trying to introduce these concepts to kids. I don't think it's a good place to stop at. Like, this isn't one you can just hand to them and be like, you're gonna learn something through this. Like, I think you need to have them read other books. I would definitely, if you're looking to introduce these topics to a kid, I would definitely have them read Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan. Yes, that's her name. It's not as fantastical, but I think it covers the same topics much better and from a much more authentic viewpoint. The last book that we are going to talk about today is Winterwood by Shay Earnshaw. Winterwood is a YA fantasy about Nora. Her family has this ancient connection to the Winterwood that is near where they live, and she's walking through it one day when she finds a boy in the snow who has been missing for a couple of weeks, and she takes him home and tries to take care of him and tries to figure out what's going on. It's because someone has been murdered, and she's also found this random boy, and a whole bunch of things happen. This book has witchy girls, it has girls with powers, it has atmosphere, it has a mystery. It's great if you're looking for like an isolated kind of creepy read. It also has urban legends and the small time dynamic working in there. It has magic woods, and it has the kind of stories, all the stories are true, narrative going on in this book. So if you like all of those things, definitely check it out. I finally read the book, y'all. How many TBRs has this book been on? Oh my gosh. Also, highly recommend the audiobook. It's really, really good. It's got 2 different narrators. It really just good book. Perfect book for an audiobook. So it was a little iffy there towards the end because there's a twist that I should have seen coming, but I didn't see coming if you see my vlog. I had mixed feelings about this twist. It almost ruined the book for me, but then the author fixed it. So we're all good now. Everything is a-okay. I just love the format of this book, of this having these 2 different narrators and then these interspersed places from this book that Nora's family keeps that talks about her ancestors and the other women who have been in her family and their powers and hearing their stories. Like, it was so well placed out, and like I didn't even pay attention to half of how those would fit in with the rest of the narrative, but there were places where they fit in really well, and so it's one that I think I'm going to probably reread like at some point, because I just and try and figure out like how does this relate to this. I just loved hearing about her family. I thought it was such a good, clever addition to the narrative. I also liked the romance. This was a very good book to pick up after having read a book that had no romance, or no romance that I could get behind and ship and be happy about. Yeah, I thought it went at this beautiful, perfect pace for what was happening in the story. I mean, like, there's definitely some high stakes stuff, so there's emotions getting involved and stuff like that, but I also think that like it went just far enough without going too far for how things end up in the story and what's going to happen towards the end. Like, really well done, set up. I enjoyed it. Also, this book is very, very kind of eerie and mysterious. Like, it's a little spooky. Like, this whole idea of this Winterwood that's kind of creepy, and like it kind of hovers over everything that Nora does. Like, she's like, there are multiple times where she's like, don't make the trees mad, and you're just sitting there going, what happens if you make the trees mad? Are they gonna like get up and like do the imp thing, or what is going to happen, Nora? Why do we need to be worried about this? You are continuously questioning everything, which makes sense because Nora is also continually questioning everything, but you're just sitting there going, what the heck is going on? This is so weird. Nora is trying to like figure out what happened with this murder and whether or not she can trust Oliver, and you're going, okay, but can she trust him? Is it where's the dead person? So like, low-key spooky, definitely suspenseful. I recommend it. I enjoyed it. I cannot wait to see the Wicked Deep, how that goes, because if I think that sounds like it's gonna be right up my alley too. Ta-da! What I read for the month of September. None of these are my TBR book. It's fine. I'm a failure. I don't care. Whatever. Let me know down in the comments if you ever read any of these books. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. Keep things spoiler-free though, or put the spoilers under a cut or whatever, so that we're not spoiling anyone who's here for the first time. Not that there's anyone that reads the comments on my channel, probably, except for the people commenting. Like, there's like 4 of y'all, and I really appreciate you. I love you. Thank you. Keep commenting. You make me feel worthy. And like, I should continue on with this. I keep on with this booktube channel for y'all. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And also, check out some of these other videos while you're on YouTube. You might find something else that you like. I might say something else that you like. Or I might say something that you dislike. Feel free to tell me that too. Or you could just hit the dislike button and give me engagement. Like, I appreciate that as well. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading. And I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!